So that was didn't say the name. Welcome to Believe in Kentucky, first of all, but that was a little audio from Jalen Whitlow's run where he got
I didn't
Mark
know where
Stoops,
which one that was.
Mark Stoops' second win. I was trying to see if he said Whitlow, but it was a little highlight clip, and so I was like, let's put the little audio in there. Tom calling the run. You talked about it against Alabama State, and so yeah. But look, the Believe in Georgia guys, they play a little clip of Israel troop highlight catching the pass or something in Sanford Stadium. I was like, we can do that here too. So get a little Jalen audio. Maybe I didn't piece it in there right, but we'll work on it and get better.
That's an impressive find.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's a little different beginning, but look, welcome into Believe in Kentucky. Got Aaron Gershon from the Cats Paws, the former UK quarterback, Jalen Whitlow. We reminisce on the run he made against his fellow Montgomery, a lot of fellow Montgomery, Alabama natives. Fellas, how we doing this week?
Good, man. Can't complain.
Yeah, good, man. Big week. Big week. It's been busy, and this one kind of I think this is the game. Obviously, you're 4-0. That's great. This is obviously your biggest test yet, and this is the tone center right here. If you can win this game, you can. We'll see what happens at Georgia next week, but conceivably, your chances to win the East or at least finish second, they're all there for the taking. You can run the table at least for that second spot in the East if you can't, upset Georgia next week. But if you lose this one, then you have some concern about this team and what the future is for this season. So huge week for Kentucky here with the Gators coming to town Saturday afternoon.
Kentucky 4-0. We've got out of Nashville with the win to start conference play. Jumped all over them at 11 o'clock. I mean, 11:30, it was 24-0 already.
Yeah, 21-0 is the largest first quarter lead of the Stoops era. So that's how dominant the first quarter was. And really midway through the second. But again, it's kind of what's been Kentucky. My dog is joining in here. But what's killed Kentucky this year, not killed, but what's hurt them this year and set them back is these 10 to 20 minute spurts where they just are all out of sync offensively. In this case, they had a bad defensive possession too, but more so the offense putting pressure on that defense to be perfect. And in this game, it was the last 5 minutes of the first half and first 5 or so, maybe a little more of the second half. So they got to eliminate those. Every team's going to have a run of momentum. It's like college basketball, where it's a game of runs a little bit, but it's prolonged spurts that are keeping this team from hitting a second gear and playing four full quarters of good football. So that was the frustrating thing. But overall, it's hard not to be pretty pleased with a 17-point road win. They put backups in at the end. Vandy scores a garbage time touchdown. So even the scoreboard, it wasn't as close as the scoreboard showed. You jump out to that 24-0 lead at 11 a.m. And that, it's not a tough atmosphere from a fans going crazy noise, silent count standpoint, but tough atmosphere with the aesthetics of it, the setup and everything. So overall, I think you got to be pretty pleased with that win, but definitely still, a little more meat on the bone, as we keep saying every week.
Yeah, that was the title of an episode 2-3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Kind of the narrative coming out of the press conferences. I just named this one 4 good quarters equals 3 in a row over Florida. So it's basically, and that hadn't happened around here in a long time. But they put a complete game together. I think they'll, notch another victory over the Gators. Beat them in Lexington in 2021. Went down there and beat them again last year. And they put 4 quarters together. I think they can make Florida one-dimensional and then handle business again this coming Saturday.
Yeah, I think obviously, it almost seems after the game that it seems like they are always frustrated and they already are thinking about the negative things that they got to say after the game. However, anytime you jump out on an SEC opponent 21-0 in the first quarter, it's a big deal. That's dominance. Anytime you beat an SEC team at home, and they acknowledge this, that's a big deal. That's a good win. Obviously, more consistency on the offensive side of the ball is always what they're looking for. But I also think it's just a work in progress too, man. It was week 4, or game 4.
Right.
So, once you hit that 5th, 6th game, you really want to catch a rhythm. Some people say 3rd and 4th game you want to catch a rhythm, but I thought they played pretty well. I mean, you scored that many points on the SEC opponent. Now, obviously, the defense scored
twice.
So, but I think anytime you can beat a team that bad, I think it's good. It's good that you have a good defense to allow your offense to gain rhythm. To take their time to get that flow going. So I think it's big. I think this week will be extremely huge. I think if they can get this game, you're 5-0 to start the season. I mean, that's pretty good. And I think it kind of sets you up to where your team is extremely confident moving forward into the biggest game of the year, which would be Georgia. So I think it's going in the right direction. Special teams seem to be playing pretty solid. Defense, anytime your defense is scoring touchdowns and sacking the quarterback and holding a quarterback who has been one of the best passers in the nation.
Yeah.
I mean, A.J. Swan has been –
They beat him up.
Yeah, he's been terrific this year outside of Kentucky. So I think that's a good outing, man. That's a good job.
Yeah, it absolutely was, especially not just Swan. They have as good a receiving core, at least in the east side of the SEC. I mean, with Will Shepherd, and Shepherd's held to 2 catches. McGowan was making plays. He didn't even have a catch. I think just a short run. And then London Humphreys only had 2 grabs, or 2 or 3 also. So they were able to do a really good job of that receiving core. But, yeah, this week, we were saying it before the show, man, it's the tone setter. Like, they played 4 games. They went 4-0. They should be 4-0. And they did some good things and did some things that can still be built upon. But if you win this game, you're 5-0. Even if you lose this Georgia game, your goal is to win the East. So I don't want to poo-poo it and just say they're going to lose, whatever. But at least you're in a position where, if Georgia were to have a slip up because they have looked vulnerable, you could be the team that could overtake them or at least finish second. And you're putting yourself in play to have one of those New Year's Six Bowls, which they haven't gotten to yet. So if you win this game, there's the road to a special season still there. If you lose it, it's not gone, but it's a lot harder because you're going to go to Georgia next week. The confidence, assuming you lose this week, lose next week too, you're losing two games in a row. You have Missouri going into the bye week, which is a team you can't sleep on at this point because they're 4-0 and they have 2 quality wins. One on a neutral site, one at home against a pretty good K-State team. And then you got Tennessee, who we all know the history there. You go Starkville, where the history there. So it gets tough. So this is a massive, massive game that's going to, I think, set the tone for what this year is going to be. Because, again, 4-0, you're supposed to be 4-0. Doesn't matter. It matters how you got there, and it also doesn't. I think the season kind of starts Saturday, if we're being real. This is where it's time to strap up and get a big one.
Yeah. As always, brought to you by Believe.com, Believe Podcast Network. You can watch us live streaming here on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. The audio version will be out wherever you listen shortly after we finish up. So retweet, tell your friends about it. If you want to comment, throw a comment in there. And, if I pay attention, I can even show it as we talk. So got to get used to that and continue to remember that. So feel free to jump in here and ask questions or give Jalen restaurant recommendations when he comes back to Lexington, whatever you want to do. We got some good ones from Mark Story a couple weeks ago. If y'all listen to that, he has some good recommendations as well. We continue to do that too. You mentioned, they don't get a lot of plays. The scoop, the pick sixes by Hairston, took away possessions for the offense.
And the pick that got him to the 11 took away
plays
too.
Yeah, the D-Jack pick, sure did.
That was a hell of a play.
Swan was 16 or 40, right?
Something so like that. Yeah, I'll pull up the exact. I think that's exactly right.
40% on the day. So I mean, Jalen, that ain't cutting it no matter where you're playing.
No, yeah, that is that says that you got dominated on up front in particular.
Yes, exactly.
Definitely in coverage too, man. They always Stoops defenses have always done a good job in coverage, man. They've always been that way. Even my sophomore year, which was his first year at Kentucky, I mean, the disguises, the amount of guys dropping 8, dropping 7, dropping 6, playing cover 2, playing cover 4, playing cover 3, cover 0. The different match coverages that they play now, they've evolved a lot since I've seen it, face to face. So I just think it's, when I watch film on Kentucky's defense, it's complex, man. It gives offensive coaches a lot of problems because there's so much to prepare for. There's so much to prepare for when it comes to a stunt and blitz point of view, just an overall static front point of view. They're never consistent with their front. It's always moving. It's always fluid. It's very multiple. So that causes issues. It's a tough week of preparation for a college program who only have X amount of hours to really prepare for that stuff, man. So it's tough. It's they do a good job. Brad White is very underrated in my opinion. Good. What they do on defense, man, it could give you a headache to prepare for if you were offensive coordinator. So, now the talent is a lot better on defense. So, I can see them being one of the best or one of the nation's elite at the end of the year if they continue on this trend, because they're getting a lot of turnovers. I mean, Harrison might as well play receiver the amount of balls he's getting. So it's looking good, man. If they can be good on defense and good on special teams, I think the offensive catch up and they'll do their thing. Even I say catch up, they're not playing bad.
No,
they're just maybe not playing as consistent as they would want. But they're not playing bad by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I want to get into something with the offense later, but going off, you said pretty much everything I want to say, just expanding on that. Defensively, I think the thing that's really the two things that they struggled with last year that, they were still a great unit, but the two things that maybe held them back from that elite status you were talking about there, Jalen, sacks and turnovers. And I think they're leading the SEC in turnovers right now. Like you said, Harrison has 3 picks. They've had a couple forced fumbles in there. They've been ball hawks, which is awesome because it's not something that Brad White, as great as a defense coordinator as he is, I agree, he's underrated. I can't believe he's not a head coach or a DC somewhere. I mean, credit to him for being loyal because he could easily be the DC at LSU right now. Yeah. But they are taking away the ball at a high rate and they're getting to the quarterback. They're tied for 6th in the SEC in sacks, where last year I believe they finished dead last in the SEC. They only had 20, and I believe they're at 11 already this year. So, and it's a lot of different guys doing it. I think the team leaders are all tied with a sack and a half, and that's what's special about this front 7. More so, the inside backers are Trevin and D-Jack. Martez Thor has been in there a little bit lately, but more so on the D-line and at outside backer, man, they can rotate the hell. They're 2 to 3 units deep, and that's keeping guys fresh. I was talking to the guys about it today. Keyshawn Silver, Octavius Oxendine, and Tyrese Fairbury. They're like, we're fresh, we're healthy, and that's not always. And I asked Keyshawn, like, is this normally how healthy you feel 5 weeks into a season? He said, no. Like, usually they're more beat up because they're playing a lot more, but they can rotate so many different dudes. I mean, you're talking on the D-line alone: Walker, Saunders, Silver, Hayes, Dinkins. I'm probably leaving Ripka, Ox. I mean, there's a lot of dudes there. And then an outside backer, JJ's off to a little bit of a slow start. He only has 1 sack through 4 weeks, but you've gotten help from Tyrese Fairbury. He comes in on a free rush last week and he forces an errant throw on 3rd down. Noah Matthews is starting to rotate in there a little bit. So they've got crazy depth on the front 7, which is keeping guys healthy, keeping guys fresh. And they always seem to have fresh legs going after the quarterback. And that's obviously also helping them in the run. I mean, how about Darian Henry-Young? He's got a sack and a half and he's affecting games at the DN spot as like the 3rd stringer there. So a lot of depth. And then in the DBs, Phillips and Harrison, man, they're playing out of their minds, both of them. I know Phillips doesn't have the pick yet, but you look at some of the pass breakups he's had, some of the tackles in the open field. I mean, him and Harrison are the 2 highest graded corners in the SEC right now, and Harrison 2nd in the country. Like, you're getting elite DB play at corner, and those safeties. I don't know if they've showed up in the stat sheet as much this year, but specifically Zion Childers and Jalen Geiger, they're affecting games too. So it's a deep defense, and we all know. I don't even have to go on a Trevin Wallace thing right now. We all know what he can do at inside backer. It's a really, really good defense that's going to help them have a chance every single week. And then we can get into more of what the offense needs to do to complement it. But you got to feel really good about this defense and this Florida offense. They could run the ball really well, with Etienne and Johnson a little bit. But, Graham Mertz is not a guy who's going to beat you down the field. If you're able to get up to that, I'm not going to say they're going to get up to a 24-0 lead. That's not going to happen this week. But if they were to take a 2-possession lead early, that's enough to bury this Florida team because they are not a team built to come from behind. You saw what happened against Utah. Same thing. They got down early, and they just, even though the defense held Utah in the second half, they didn't have the Cats to fight back. They just didn't have the firepower.
I got a couple questions too for you, Jay. I'll get to one now. Just going back to the defense, because you said that they have evolved a lot. How much of that is by necessity because of what offenses are doing? How much of it is by choice and kind of a natural progression that we would eventually got to this anyway, just because he kind of in his bag and he's got better talent, got more depth? How much of it is that? How much of it is these offenses are doing this and we gotta adapt to slow them down? How would you divide up how you think that evolution is taking place?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think offenses are definitely evolving. I mean, my last year playing at Kentucky was 2013, so that's 10 years ago. Offenses have evolved a lot. Just not even from what most people see. Obviously, most people see a lot more, fireworks. Most people see a lot more motion and, fast motion and what the Dolphins is doing now.
Oh my gosh.
a lot more, just flexible personnel, right? So I may be in 11 personnel or I may be in 12 personnel, but both of my two tight ends and 12 personnel can play receiver. They can play outside, they can play inside, they can play off the ball. As an H-back or sniffer, they can play on the ball, on the line of scrimmage. I mean, it's so much that the flexibility, this is kind of nerding out right here, but this is what I really feel. I really feel like the shackles have been taken off of the minds of coaches. Most coaches have been extremely – you watch most NFL teams, especially about 10 years ago and even 5 years ago, they are extremely cookie cutter. Everybody's doing the same thing. It takes somebody like McVay or McDaniel or Shanahan, the son Shanahan, to really revolutionize this thing, man. And really, I'm not saying older coaches weren't revolutionary when it comes to concepts and scheme and whatnot, but now offenses are so diverse and so multiple and so wide open that as a defensive coordinator, if you're not adapting, then you're getting 50 hung on you every week. It's that simple because everything evolves. Now, on the flip side of that, defenses have evolved so much to where offenses have to evolve again. So, I think it's just a cat and mouse game kind of, year to year, every few years, 4 years, 5 years or so, this thing really flips on its head and it goes back and forth. So, we went from seeing teams having to find a way to cover this or to play the spread offense, to defend the spread. Now teams are going back to how do I defend multiple tight ends, multiple fullbacks? How do I defend that now? Because teams are evolving, they're changing. So, I heard Nick Saban say last week, he was talking about how now we figured out how to defend the spread. Offensive coaches are going back to more traditional, bigger personnels in football, older school football, right? Your tight ends, your fullbacks, running inside, running the power. Getting back under center, right? I'm training quarterbacks now, and we have to. And it's funny how this works. 3 years ago, we weren't touching much under center stuff in my training sessions, or I should say, our training sessions. Now, we don't go much time without going under center. We are working under center because my offense that we run at the school I coach at, we play football under center. Very little, but we do it. Right? When I first started coaching in 2017-18, nobody was under center in high school. Nobody. Now everybody's being multiple. So to make a long story short, his defense had to evolve, but at the same time, he's got new coaches, new ideas, new philosophies, to where naturally some of those ideas trumped his old ideas, so he had to take on that. So I think you get guys like Summerall and Brad White and some of these other guys who've come through there. You're going to start to evolve some because those are good defensive minds.
I talked with Coach Collins, who was a young dude coaching the DBs.
Yep.
And, I was asking him, like, obviously they wanted you, but how did you still kind of be true to yourself? But you got to learn because you're coming in and getting hired by a defensive guy who coached secondary. So it was kind of like a tightrope that you kind of had to strike a balance because he's a young dude, early 30s, young toddler for a son. So like you said, these younger minds coming in and, kind of everybody just putting ideas together and combining it and see what you come up with. So, yeah, it was just cool to kind of dive into that. That's why I had to ask you that, man, for sure. Yeah. That's what we do on this podcast, man. Everybody, you nerd out. It's like you don't want to, but sometimes you do, and you like almost like you apologize for it, which I don't think you should.
No, I ain't about. I just know that sometimes I can start to get in the weeds if you let me keep going.
Yeah, I'm finding myself this year more so than last year. My stats are like the amount of stats I have in my brain are like it's too much.
Hey.
It's almost unhealthy.
I don't know.
When we get into the offense a little bit here, like I have these stats that are just like, why the hell do you know this type of stats?
Yeah, I don't know how you do it, man. You
yesterday
I think that you were pretty good at math.
No, hell no, I wasn't. I give credit to PFF. They not the grades. I'm not high on the grading system. I mean, it helps an argument when you're able to say Max Harrison's the highest graded guy in the SEC, but more so when they track, for example, with corners, they do a really good job of tracking, targeted passes and how many catches are given up, the yak they're giving up on those offensive linemen, the pressures, the hurries, same, with defensive, with pass rushers. So, I was able to gather some of that when it comes to the offense and some of the efficiency stuff, and, average depth per target, stuff like that. So, when we get into the offense, I'll hit on a couple of those.
See, two of y'all is why we are back-to-back Big Game Boomers Best Football Podcast. That's the stuff y'all do. See, that's what I'm just saying. He voted for us twice.
He did. He got something right. There's not much.
Aaron statting out, Jalen nerding out, and we got the crown and we held the crown. So we went back to back. I'm just saying.
Let's keep it.
Keep it going.
Speaking of Harrison, SEC Player of the Week, college football.
He had a Josh Allen week.
National Football Foundation Player of the Week. I mean, just national honors. But Jalen, you're an offensive guy. So when you face a guy who balls out like he just did, you're an offensive coordinator at high school, even at the high school level, a dude just goes crazy. Do you change your game plan, or do you say, well, we can still get him. I still see holes in this game. We're going to attack him anyway. Kind of like, kids commit. The Smith twins and Corbin just committed to Kentucky after the Corbin-Douglas game. Well, every offensive lineman in the state, well, if I can pancake these boys, I put that on my huddle. So you go at them even more. You get extra attention. So, well, you're OC. I'm asking you to hypothetically put yourself in Florida's meeting room. Are they gonna go at him more? Are they gonna say, "Oh, let's maybe change what we thought we were gonna do"? Are they just gonna do what they were gonna do anyway? How do you think they will approach playing a guy who just went nuts the week before they got to come play him?
No, we just played one of the best high school football players I've ever seen last Friday, who starting quarterback, also starts safety, and he went nuts on us too, man. So the thing is with guys like that, it all depends on the player. Like if he's a super, super aggressive player, then you try to attack him where, you try to use that against him, right? Use his aggressiveness against him, right? Double moves, that type of thing, put some eye candy motion in there. misdirection, use that against him. But if it's a guy who just, he's the best player on the field sometimes, and I had to learn this lesson last Friday, sometimes just stay the hell away from him, because they will find a way to beat you if you let them. So, some players, man, they just, the ball just finds them. It's hard to explain. The ball just finds them. I've been playing football since I was 6. I've been playing sports since I was 5. Still can't really define what that means, but the ball just finds some guys. It just happens that way. Some guys are extremely talented and extremely, physically gifted to where they're going to make their plays if the ball is in the area. Sometimes guys are super heady and they always in the right spot. Sometimes the ball just finds those guys. Sometimes the ball just finds guys for no reason. So I think obviously Harrison is a good player, but also he's a guy to where he seems like he's always around the football. Was that him who got the toss back from
Andrew Phillips?
Okay. I was just double check. I couldn't remember.
He's doing really good things too, though.
Yeah, he is.
The interception numbers aren't there, but the pass breakup numbers and man, you look at some of his coverage, it's sticky. I'd argue in coverage, Phillips is the one who's playing better of the two. Harrison that's not a slight on Harrison. I just think in coverage, you look at Phillips, man, they got 2 lockdown outside corners. They really do. And Phillips, who obviously have versatility, move him into the nickel.
Yeah. So if I'm Florida, yes, I have to be aware of where he is. If I'm a quarterback or if I'm an offensive coordinator, got to make sure my quarterback is aware of where he is, because you don't want to let the guys that can beat you. And sometimes it's easier said than done if they're a super good player. But
right.
If you can avoid them, you try to avoid them when you can. Sometimes it ain't gonna happen. Sometimes you got to throw the ball to his side if he's that type of player. Sometimes the ball's got to go to where it got to go, and maybe you get them, maybe you don't. But some of those Deion Sanders type, Patrick Peterson when he was in college type, some of those type of guys, try to stay away from them.
Makes sense, man. Aaron, you said you want to get us some stuff too. Offensively?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting with this. Liam Cohn made a comment on Tuesday when I was asking him about, Devin Leary was talking about how, he wants to take some of the layups more. And this offense this year, they're explosive. Like I keep saying it, but it's different, right? Jalen talked about how offenses, they're starting to kind of get back to that ground and pound and 12 personnel, even 13 personnel, fullbacks. And that's what, Mark Stoops, that's what the backbone of this program. But you look at this offense, man, they're passing more than half the time and they're throwing it deep. Like his average depth of target, which is just how many yards in the air your throw is going on average, is 11.6, which is well in the top tier in the country. And he's throwing passes of 20 yards or more on almost 20% of his pass attempts. So he's only hitting on 34.8. So that's when you're putting the ball into more risk, obviously, is throwing it down the field. And when you looked at him in North Carolina State, he did he wasn't a game manager because he did make throws down the field, but he did a really good job of when that deep shot wasn't there, getting it down to the check down. And I just feel like that's kind of been something Kentucky hasn't done well enough yet this year. I'm not counting the broken play where he got really lucky that Ray Davis was right there. Like that's not a check down. That's a broken play. So it's been interesting with that. And then same thing in the run game, man. Like they're really explosive. They have 9 runs, 20 yards per more. So like that has their average up to 5.5 yards per carry. That sounds great. But if you take those 9 runs out, they're averaging under 3 yards a carry. So it's kind of been an all or nothing offense. And I want to get your perspective on it as QB, Jalen. Like, you don't want to get rid of a quarterback's aggressiveness. You don't want to get the offense being aggressive and being explosive is a great trait, but you got to find some sort of balance. I think because they're relying so heavily on the explosive play, that's why you're seeing those 10 to 20 minutes where the offense can't do a damn thing because they're not able to manufacture the 5-yard runs that we saw Benny Snell and Chris Rodriguez have for years. We're not seeing those 7-yard passes, whether it's just hitting a receiver on a short slant or, getting it down to a running back. I just think, having some balance there is kind of the key to getting this offense unlocked for a full day.
Yeah, you want to be layered on offense. And
right.
one coach that his quarterbacks always do that well. He always preached that is Steve Sarkisian. I mean, no doubt, he's always preaching that. He's always, you want to be layered. You want to be able to sustain drives and take, 4 yards, 5 yards, 6 yards, 7 yard bites out of the defense. But you also want to have the ability, which obviously they do, to attack the field, attack the team downfield, attack the defense, down the field vertically. So having a vertical and horizontal game, I mean, I think Kentucky has good enough run game, good enough running back. Well, good enough running back. Quarterback is good. I mean, they can manufacture. It just comes down to staying away from the bad snaps, staying away from the penalties, right? You don't want to make your quarterback gun shy by preaching, don't turn the ball over, don't turn the ball over. But, also, you find that you got to preach to them, hey, our players are good enough to where we drop the ball down to them, 3 yards downfield. They may get you 10 or 12 or 20. So I think that's the big thing, man. It's just, taking what the defense give them, right? Having a good offensive structure, in which they do, to take what the defense give them, so they can just, hey, we don't have to do anything spectacular. We just got to do our job. Quarterback, just distribute the ball, right? Distribute the ball to the open guy. We have all conference players on offense. Get the ball in their hands and let that guy who you just threw a 5-yard route to, let him go 15 with it, because he will eventually, and he'll eventually go 40 with it, especially Barryon Brown and Ray Davis. I mean, they'll eventually go 40 yards with it if you just consistently try to find ways to get the ball in space. Obviously, way easier said than done, as we know.
Sure.
However, you want to be able to have a run game like, the years of Benny Snell and Chris Rodriguez, where it just seemed like every time they handed the ball off, they fell forward for 5 yards. That is right up Stoops' wheelhouse.
Yeah.
That's his life. That's what he wanted to do.
That's what I'm saying. That's the backbone of the program right there.
It is. And that's what he always wanted to be. Now he does now, and obviously he evolved to say, hey, we got to bring a guy in here to throw the ball.
They're throwing the crap out of the ball.
Yeah. and maybe it'll end up, being a good thing for him when teams start saying, hey, we can't allow this guy to beat us downfield.
Yeah, they're gonna have to respect that.
Yeah, they got to respect it. Offensive line gonna keep gelling, and the running back room is well good enough to win you games. Not even be sustainable. I mean, they can win you games.
Correct.
So I think they just got to keep chopping wood, man. I think they're good at quarterback. Offensive line is pretty solid. They're going to get better. Receivers are really good. Running back, like I said, tight ends are the strength of the offense. If you want to really argue about that, they are. As far as being diverse, run game, pass game. I mean, shoot, they in a position where they can put 4 tight ends on the field and sustain.
Right.
Most people in college can't do that. So that's pretty good.
Yeah, and I think the quote that had me go on this whole thing is Liam said, let me find it real quick, but it was more or less along the lines of they didn't really design an offense that was meant to take all these shots and have all these explosives. It was meant to be like we were just talking about, the balance and the layered stuff. So it's they're just kind of going against their identity a little bit, but that that's what's been there at this point in the year. And I think with the run game, you're right. The running backs it's an excellent running back room, and Jaton McClain, I thought, had his best game as a running back, as a Wildcat this past weekend.
Yeah,
which is a great sign. Yeah, and then Sumo Karen Java, they got to get him the ball because he can make things happen. But that one starts, I think, with the interior offensive line. The tackles are playing pretty well. Jeremy Flax has been so much better this year, which is huge for this offensive line because that was a big concern, obviously. But at guard, man, I mean, they need Kenneth Dorsey back. They miss number 68, so I'm not sure he's going to be going this weekend. It doesn't sound like it. I know he's probably chomping at the bit, especially because they're playing Florida and he's from there. But they need him back, and they just got to get Jagger Burton comfortable again. I'm glad they made the move they did to put Eli back at center, but to run inside the tackles and get some of the inside zone stuff that they've done so well for years, man. They got to play better at guard. And this is the best part of really it's strength on strength when you're looking at Florida and Kentucky, man. 2 really, really stout run games and two stout running back rooms, I should say. and then 2 stout defensive lines. So this is not necessarily the get right week on paper for the guards, but man, they really need some better play out of Jagger Burton. They need some better play out of Dylan Ray as long as he's in there for Kenneth Horsey.
Has Tanner Bowles got any snaps yet?
Yeah, he hasn't really. That's kind of one I've been a little. I mean, I guess I was having a conversation with somebody about it. I'd give him credit, but they're kind of like, he sat for 5 years, so maybe he at this point he is what he is, and that's a reserve. But yeah, he's on the depth chart every week as the backup center and as the backup right guard, one of the guard spots. So he's an option, but they haven't gone there yet. So I guess Dylan Ray and Jagger Burton are the guys for now, and I would assume Ray goes back to the bench. Well, and I cut Dylan Ray. I give some more slack to because he is a career tackle, and he was a guy they brought in as a walk-on that played so dang well in fall camp that he earned this job to be kind of a plug-and-play guy at both guard and tackle. So I do give him a little bit of a break, but they need better guard play no matter who it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he didn't even really beat around the bush when he was asked about it,
Yeah, which you gotta love. You gotta love that.
Now, speaking of injuries too, you mentioned it too, when it first happened. Ron Gaines out for the season, the long snapper.
I know, right? Of all people,
whatever kind of injury.
Yeah. Well, the good news is obviously not good news at all because he's hurt and you feel for the kid. I think it's his last year of eligibility, so never want anyone to get hurt. But the good news from Kentucky's perspective is I guess he wasn't long snapping on Saturday and there were no issues. Like none of us noticed it. So that means there were no issues because Heimbach was the short snapper. Was doing it on Saturday and was fine. So, the specials, like I think Jalen said it earlier, special teams have been playing pretty well. They had the one muff, I think, in the Akron game. But other than that, the field goals are going through. The snaps are good. I think they're in good shape on that unit. So just more so feel really bad for Ronald Gaines there.
Yeah. And getting touchbacks on kickoffs most of the time as well, as far as special teams go, you had the penalty with Dane patting homeboy on the head. So that
that was fun. I know, like it's not funny for the coaching staff and for Dane, but crowd, that was a funny one right there. They needed a big game from him, and they got it. So that was all good.
Yeah. So like you said, Jalen, game 5, game 6, catch a rhythm. Sophomore slump, maybe it is, maybe it isn't for Barryon and Dane, and then now they can kind of catch a rhythm. This will be Jagger back at guard for another game, so maybe he can catch a rhythm, kind of getting people in place consistently.
Yeah.
Instead of kind of moving around. He was at center, now he was at guard. He struggled at center, he got rattled, now he got moved. So, getting pieces in place to kind of keep them there if they're able to.
Yeah, man. Consistency, is what births, the rhythm and the production you want on offense. I mean, it's just what it is. It's just having guys in a spot. This is what you do, and you do it over and over and over again. Just like everything else, man. Naturally, you develop some consistency, which brings about production and rhythm and success. So you definitely want that. Now, I do think it is good to, if you have to go about moving guys around like they have, it's good to do it with the schedule that they've had so far, because now you can allow guys to gain experience. Somebody goes down, hopefully not, but it happens in football. You can shift guys and move guys around because they have experience playing that position. So you always want that as a coach. I've been around coaches who, they'll move guys if they know they're playing a quote unquote lesser opponent. They'll make it a point to, once they are up 14 points or so, they'll start to really shift guys and move them and make them play positions that they're uncomfortable playing, but will help the team, barring injury or barring some type of absence of guys. So I've been around coaches who, if they're up against a lesser team and they are a running team, they'll spend the whole game throwing the football. I've seen that, and especially in high school. I mean, the whole game. Like, they are a 80% run team, but they're playing a team they know they should beat. They'll throw the ball 80%.
Right.
So I think it's a good tactic. It's just the chess match of coaching. It's just there's always monkey wrenches thrown in it, man. There's always something that you got to do that maybe you didn't think of, or maybe you did, that'll manifest itself later, or maybe it doesn't, but at least you're prepared for it if it does.
Exactly. Yeah.
Makes sense. All makes sense. Oh, anything else y'all want to hit on?
Yeah.
The Gators.
Yeah, I just think, again, just to bring it home, I think you got to win this game. Like, I know it's way easier said than done, but it is just a massive game, man. These last 8 games, we talked about how I think Kentucky's strength of schedule is 132nd out of 133. Like, they have not played a good schedule. That's a conversation for another day on setting that up in the future. But now I don't know what it is now. It's got to be one of the hardest schedules left, because you're playing, you're obviously playing the rest of the East. Vandy's out of the question there. The way Missouri and Florida have kind of surprised people, those games got a lot harder than we may have anticipated in the preseason. And, you got to give credit to the school up the road, man. Like Louisville, I know they haven't played many guys either, but they look better than I think anyone would have thought year one under Jeff Brom. And they easily could be 5-0 going into their biggest game of the year so far next week against Notre Dame. So, you got 8 legitimate tough games left on the schedule. And this one, Florida's a really good defensive team. They've got 2 stud running backs. Pearsall's a pretty good receiver. Mertz, I don't like the term game manager month, because I think it's a little disrespectful to what the quarterback's doing. It's the hardest position in sports, as you well know, Jalen, in my opinion. And so he's been extremely efficient. He's completing over 70% of his passes, but he's not beating you down the field. We talked about how with Kentucky's offense, you can't let him beat you downfield. With Florida, you kind of early in the game could, because they're not necessarily going to. So they just got to take advantage of this game, man. Like, compared to some of the other games in the schedule, this is a winnable one. It's at home. I know it's at noon, but the crowd's going to be there. The game time's overrated, in my opinion. They'll be fine. And I think Kentucky's going to win. I've felt pretty good about it this week, but it ain't going to be easy with the way Florida's playing defense, even though it is a young, too. I was just looking through they just put out their depth chart, man. It is a young Florida team. So they're going to come in there, feeling like they don't have that much to lose. And they obviously have, for the guys who were on the team last year, the motivation of what happened in Gainesville, and even the year before that for any of the older players. But there are a lot of juniors, a lot of sophomores in that starting lineup, a lot of freshmen in that starting lineup. So, you got to go win this football game. It is crucial if you want to go where you want to go this year, you got to get this one.
And that works 2 ways. There's people in the Kentucky locker room now that we know we can beat Florida.
Exactly.
And that didn't used to be the thing when you lost 31 straight. Now, hey, I was on the team when they came to Lexington 2 years ago and lost. I was on the team when we went down there last year and beat them.
Right.
That factors into it as well. You know?
And I think from what I've heard this week, they've had a pretty good balance of using that confidence and also just wiping it off and saying, like, it's a new year. Like, last year didn't happen. It's on to this year. So I think it's a good balance. I think this team, for the most part, is in a pretty good headspace for most of the guys I've talked to. So, again, I do expect them to win. I know a lot of people are picking them to lose this one, but I think when you kind of watch Florida a little bit, and I was telling you guys before the show, I didn't get to watch their game against Tennessee because I was covering UK and Akron. And, I didn't come away. I came away impressed more so with the defense, but even then, like, this defense, while they're ranked 15th in the past, a lot of that is because they played a third-string quarterback against Utah, and they had a guy in there who was running most of the time, and they still gave up a 70-yard shot in that game. They played McNeasy, and they played a mobile quarterback from Charlotte. Like, Charlotte's quarterback was a throwback, run-only guy. So, they have not been battle-tested through the air. Devin Leary is the best quarterback they've seen this year, and that counts Joe Milton. I would say the best quarterback from just doing everything. Joe Milton has the better arm. We all know that. But, this is this is a matchup that I think I'm still worried about the Tennessee matchup because Tennessee can put up a ton of points and Kentucky's offense hasn't proved they can do that yet. Like I know Tennessee hasn't broken out yet. They still can. They have it in them. I'm worried about next week for Kentucky because it's Georgia. Georgia could beat anybody, but I think this is a team that Kentucky actually matches up pretty well with.
Go.
So if they lose, it's my fault.
There you go. There you go. I think somebody mentioned the Dolphins. I think they just scored again on Denver.
Was it Chosen Anderson again?
70.
Oh
and
my
this
God.
is the league that says parity more than any other league, the NFL. And you got one team scoring 70 and one team scoring 20. Sean Payton trying to get back to the booth.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that. I was talking to the guy. Like, he must feel like such an idiot right now. Like, he could be sitting on that TV money, talking all the crap he wanted about how coaches suck, and people would listen to him because he did an outstanding job in New Orleans, and he built up almost Hall of Fame resume there with the Saints.
Yeah.
But he takes this job, and they are a train wreck, and it doesn't look good on him because they look like they've gotten worse from a year ago. But that Dolphins offense, my God, they have like between Hill, Waddle, who didn't even play, by the way, against Denver, the A-Shane, the rookie from Texas A&M, Mostert, the speed they have is unbelievable. And but Tua, I've always been high on Tua, so I'm happy to see him having success. Actually, I was the last team in my 10-team fantasy league to take a quarterback, and I took Tua, and I look pretty good right now.
Oh, man. And go
70
ahead.
points.
Go ahead, Jay.
No, I was going to say, yes, Miami did just score on Denver again. I mean, that game was – I never thought I'd see a 70-point game.
And they sat on points at the end. It could have been worse. It could have been the record. All they needed was a field goal for the NFL record, and they showed some class and didn't take it.
Man, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I was just – my first thought was maybe that's just, whatever you call it, karma, whatever, Sean Payton, man. How he's doing. Russell Wilson called him out in the media and all of this. Maybe that's what that is. I don't know. But whatever it is, I don't want no parts of it. I mean, you get 70 points scored on you in the NFL game. That's unheard of.
And he popped off about how bad it was when he got the job of talking about Hackett.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, they play each other in a couple of weeks, and don't let Hackett and the Jets beat you.
Oh my! They got two straight toilet bowls with the Bears. The Bears looked so bad, man. And I hate this being I was right, this guy stinks guy, but I just never saw. I saw people hyping up Justin Fields as MVP this year, and I was just like, oh, are we watching that? Like, maybe I'm not. Maybe I don't know ball, but are we watching the same guy he just looks scared in that pocket and he doesn't get the ball out? And man, they're a mess in Chicago. And I don't know about you guys for what you've seen in the NFL. I feel like there is a lot of parity in. I mean, you got to give credit. I know you don't even want to talk about it, Vin. You got to give credit to Arizona. Not even for the win. Not even for the win, though. They played well against the Giants. They played well against they're playing good football for a terrible roster. Houston just kicked Jacksonville's ass. They're playing some good football. And some of these really, like the Bengals have looked terrible for all three games. Their defense looked okay this past week, but they're off. I know Burrow's hurt, but I feel like there's been a lot of bad football being played in the NFL. Like turnovers are up this year. Just bad decision, bad coaching making across the league. Like outside of the Dolphins, the 49ers, and maybe a couple other teams, man. Like no one, and I'd say Kansas City too. I know they lost week 1, but that was because two of the best players on the planet weren't playing. There's just no one is impressing me this year. It's almost like I don't know. I've been kind of shocked with the low quality of NFL football we've kind of seen through 3 weeks.
Yeah, I kind of hope I'm starting to like the Dolphins, man.
Yeah, they're gonna put 80 on the Giants in 2 weeks. I'm mentally preparing myself for that.
And they go to Buffalo while it's still warm, so Buffalo better watch out. It's not like it's going to be 20.
No, they got the right time to go to Buffalo.
Yeah. So they caught a break there too. The Cowboys, the red zone. I know you had a couple linemen out, but it was still just bad decision.
Yeah.
And Diggs is a blow too.
But, that sucked. I hated to hear that.
And you get it to 21-16, you're settling for field goals, and you're right there, and then you bust the coverage and give up a big play, and it was just,
I just think
show up to play. They didn't even look ready to play, and it makes me. I was skeptical about McCarthy when he took over play calling duties, and this didn't do anything.
That's not going to help it.
Yeah,
I know they've struggled a little bit in the passing game early, but I honestly, I think Dallas will be fine. I think that game said more about what Arizona's coaching staff is doing and getting the most out of their guys. Because again, they played really well against Washington week 1, and Washington's not great. We just saw what they did. We just saw what they did against a good team. Yeah. They got their ass beat, but they obviously took a 20-0 lead on my Giants, who were in the playoffs last year, and the Giants came all the way back. But they've played above what they should be, and I think you got to give credit to their players and give credit to their coaching staff. And same with Houston, man. Houston more so. CJ Stroud, I think a lot of people might have been wrong about him. He looks like the real deal so far, and maybe he's the guy who's going to break that Ohio State quarterback curse, because it wasn't Justin Fields, and I think it might be CJ Stroud, though. I don't know if you've seen what he's doing in Houston down there. Even though they've only won one game, he's played well in all three.
Going back to the Cardinals, it's just Josh Dobbs terrorizing me again like he did in Tennessee.
He was a Kentucky killer, man.
Yeah. And he
killed Kentucky. And he was
limping past safeties. He was on one leg out there.
Yeah, he played great against the Giants too. Yeah, he's playing well. Good for him, man. That's a great story. I know, put the Tennessee stuff aside. The guy who's been a career backup, was a 4th-round pick. He's on his 5th different team. He gets traded to Arizona after the preseason, I think. I think the preseason was over.
Aerospace engineer major.
Yeah. Oh man, he's an amazing story.
I ran into him a
oh yeah?
Yeah. I ran into him not far from where I live, probably around a month ago or so. I recognized him. I'm like, damn, that's Josh Dobbs. But yeah, he's just a steady player, man. He's not a great NFL quarterback.
No.
He just gets it done. And he's good enough to keep his job, which is he's doing his thing, man. You got to respect it.
If the Jets had him instead of Zach Wilson, their playoff hopes are still in good shape. The Jets defense is so damn good. They've got some playmakers and
that's Zach Wilson. Man.
Oh my God, he's the worst quarterback. One of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen. He is. I feel bad for him at this point, because he's supposed to be sitting behind Aaron Rodgers and maybe learning something, and he gets thrusted into this thing, and he's getting all the blame. But at what point is it the coaches for letting him still play? And not, I know they just brought in Trevor Siemian, but Tim Boyle, former EKU colonel there, he has some NFL starts under his belt. Give him a shot. What's the worst that can happen? It's almost impossible to be as bad as what Zach Wilson's been. At one point, it's on the coaches. It's on the coaches for letting that happen.
When you got Joe Namath throwing your hands up at everybody,
yeah,
and
look, you got Aaron Rodgers trying to push the two between. It's just a mess. It's the same old Jets. It's the same old Jets.
Joe Namath won that Super Bowl in 1969. The Jets haven't done much of nothing since.
They haven't done anything since. They haven't been to one since.
The fact that he hadn't snapped on them before now is impressive. The fact
that's
he
what's
waited
crazy.
55 years to really just I'm sick and tired of all y'all.
Yeah.
Everybody got to go. And if you're the defensive guys, you ain't got to like each other. But if if you what did he say? If you're not pointing your finger at Zach Wilson, get rid of them guys too.
Yeah, exactly. He wants to and the thing is, they are. That locker room is going to explode if they don't bench Zach Wilson. And again, I feel bad for him. He's not good. It's a known commodity. They brought in Aaron Rodgers for a reason there, and the Achilles happened, and you get thrusted into duty. But man, they're just the Jets. That's the best way I can put it. They're the Jets.
He can't be using the win as an excuse. That made it.
Last year. Do you feel like you let the defense down when you lose 10-3? No.
That's right. So
he didn't do it. I was curious to see if he's matured, and I went and listened to his press conference, and he has. So I give him that. Again, that's why I feel bad for him at this point, because it seems like he's taking steps personally, but his game is just not good, and sometimes that happens.
Mm-hmm. Learn from your mistakes. At least he's learning from mistakes. That's good.
That's exactly right. You can't can't fault the guy. And who knows? I don't think it's going to happen. Maybe he's the next Geno Smith, where 9 years into his NFL career, he becomes a top 15 quarterback. Like Geno Smith is balling, and this guy is in his early 30s, and it took him 9 years to hit a stride. So I think he's the story of anything's possible when it comes to NFL quarterbacks.
He was like the minor leaguer in AAA for 14 years.
Oh my gosh!
Finally gets up to the big time.
They've scored 37 2 weeks in a row, and he's making these. And you watch them, and it's like these throws are like, where has he been?
Hey man, sometimes it just takes the right combination of players and coaches. And
that's right.
Maturity and growth for it all come together, man. So I think that's what happened with him.
Yeah.
Well, man, I think this is what happened with us. We had another good episode. Appreciate the knowledge. Aaron Gershon, Cat's Paws, to read all the stories, all the content. The cover story he just did the other day. Y'all check that out. Jalen Whitlow, former kid quarterback. Training sessions, coaching, got a full plate, but helping these young ones, come on up and learn the position. Be prepared to be a student athlete in this day and age. So always bringing good stuff to the episode. Yo, check out the audio or go back and watch the live streams. Be available everywhere. Appreciate y'all taking the time to tune in and look forward to talking about Kentucky being 5-0. We'll talk about Georgia next week and whatever happens throughout the SEC, the NFL. Kentucky basketball practicing, men and women will be seeing what's going on with that. So it's that crazy fall, September, October, everything's starting to happen all at once. World Series coming around the corner. All that stuff's happening here soon. So we'll talk about all of it here on Believe in Kentucky on the Believe Network. And we'll see everybody next Wednesday. Go Cats.